Gary Kopachinski at E-News Park Forest. We are very happy to have, I guess, State Rep Al Riley,
Formerly.
former State Rep. But Al was also a member of the Electoral College. So he was one of 20 electors in Illinois who went to the state capitol and cast his vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Al, what was that like?
Well, it was an honor. It was an honor to be chosen, first of all, and to be able to represent the 2nd Congressional District, where I am the state central committeeman, to cast my vote for Joe Biden to be president and Kamala Harris to be vice president. You know, historically, no one really cared much about the Electoral College vote. Everyone knew that it was there. Everyone knew that based on the federal constitution, that the popular vote and the Electoral College go together in terms of electing our chief executive. It was really, I guess, 20 years ago when Al Gore ran, and of course that election was finally figured out by the Supreme Court, the famous Bush versus Gore Supreme Court case, did, at least in terms of popular knowledge, the whole issue of some of the historical problems with the Electoral College came about. And frankly speaking, ever since then, there's been some controversy. George H.W. Bush was really the last Republican president that was actually elected by the popular vote. Everyone else was elected by the Electoral College. And so that is why this particular vote was so important. And that's why it was an honor and a duty to be chosen to go down and be part of the Electoral College in this case.
And as they say, it ain't over yet. She hasn't sung. Do you see any avenue for Republicans to overturn the popular vote and the electoral vote at this point?
No, I do not, as much as they protest to the contrary. You know, this is really an attack on democracy. And I think that everyone, and I've got friends on every political stripe, except for some of the far extreme ones, which the far extreme ones really got a lot of cachet based on this current administration. And they know that our constitutional job is done. And they feel that all of this is really an attack on democracy. This has never been done before. It has been proven. First of all, it's a big shibboleth, this whole thing about voter fraud. If one really thinks about it, how do you carry that out? How do individuals cheat with their vote or vote twice? You know, with all these electronic systems that we have and all of the checks and balances, how can there be a 50-state conspiracy or a 4-state conspiracy in the battleground states to really cheat at the vote? Heads of election departments in so-called red states even said it was the cleanest election around. So there's really no way they can do it. But the fact that they are going to these very arcane rules to try to do it, the first time in the history of this country, tells you that these people, you talk about being un-American, that's un-American. That's hating your country. That's hating democracy, to go to this extent with something that they can't prove. So no, it's not going to happen. I think all the mechanisms are in place for it not to happen, but the process is there, and they're going to go through the process of trying to overturn the votes in the battleground states. So there will be an objection by, whatever the congressman's name is, and I hope he turns into a pariah. At the least, I hope that the House censures him. He's going to go through the process, and there will be debates. And one House can reject it. It'll never go to the Senate, and it'll never happen. But that is really a stain on our democratic process, small d.
So for our viewers and for those who are reading this later, this is the second time we've had this conversation. I botched the first one, or my computer did over here. You mentioned last time that this is that it's time to see the Electoral College go away. We talked about its roots emanating all the way from slavery. One man being counted as 3/5 a man. Is it time to get rid of this?
Well, I think it is. I've had varying views on it. The Electoral College historically, in my mind and in the mind of a lot of people, really served no purpose. It is an anachronism. However, when Barack Obama was elected, he won the popular vote and the Electoral College. Those of us who were for Obama, he did what he had to do. He got in and served 2 successful terms. So the vicissitudes of the Electoral College existed at that time, but because they didn't get in the way of a person who, everybody wanted, the great majority to be president, we really didn't pay a lot of attention to it. I think that from Bush v. Gore and the hanging chads and all of that, through the attempt by Mitch McConnell when he said publicly that he wanted to be sure that Barack Obama was a one-term president. Not, we're going to resist some things that ideologically we have a problem. He says he's going to make him a one-term president, which again is anti-American. Till now, to this last 4 years, which has been a disaster that this great nation has never seen, we've seen holes in the armor of our Constitution. We've seen them in terms of the power, sometimes unbridled power of the judicial branch. Some of the things that the Supreme Court has done. It's supposed to be a co-equal branch. We saw during the Obama administration how, one of the houses of Congress could more or less stop everything that the executive wanted to do. And we've seen now the powers of the presidency in the hands of an unstable person. So I think that this upcoming Congress has to fix those things. And the president has to fix those challenges that were always there, but had never come to the forefront because we never had someone in office, that was this brazen. This guy makes Herbert Hoover and Richard Nixon, look like great statesmen. So the Electoral College, it is time for it to go. The whole issue, for example, of small states and who wanted to wield power. And often a lot of the debates came from the perspective of who was going to be a slave state, who was going to be a free state, and all of that. Going all the way back then, how a state, no matter what its population was still going to get 2 senators. And other kinds of things were part and parcel of the construction of the Electoral College. And I think the roots of challenging one person, one vote which at that time was not one person, one vote, because you certainly couldn't be an enslaved or a slave that became free and an emancipated person, or certainly a woman at that time. You know, why keep the vestiges of that terrible time now to this point with something as important as determining who your chief executive is going to be?
So where we stand now, we'll find out. We have a few days. Tuesday is the day of reckoning.
Well, you'll get two important days back to back, because we have the special elections in Georgia, which is going to determine the control of the Senate. And control of the Senate is extremely important. If we've been through a situation where, you know, we had a Democratic president, and, you know, for those watching, you know, I'm a Democrat. But a lot of this doesn't have anything to do with party. It really has to do with, you know, preserving democracy. But it's going to be determination on who controls Congress. Mitch McConnell has been a thorn in the side of Republicans and Democrats. You know, I mean, Republicans have Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, just like everybody else. And so all the things that in conjunction with Trump and McConnell being his empowerer, that's not good for anybody. So control of the Senate is very important. We're going to find that out on the 5th. If Warnock and Ossoff get in, then it's 50-50 with all ties broken by the president of the Senate, which will be Vice President Kamala Harris. And then you'll see some things get done. I mean, you'll see some things get done. So that's important. The other date that's important, which is I think the next day, is the certification of all the Electoral College votes in all of the states. That has always been cursory. That has always been sort of ceremonial. But again, in this particular time, it's extremely important. And as I say, it's going to turn into a clown show, all because this one person wants to make it so. So those 2 days are extremely important back to back.
Anything else you'd like to say? You're certainly not a state rep anymore, but you're obviously very active. Anything else? Anything else you'd like to let people know?
Well, certainly, I'd like to say this. Someone on another interview show asked me about the process of becoming an elector, and I told him, you know, yes, I was a state rep. You know, I served the 38th district for 6 terms for 12 years. I became assistant majority leader of the House. Yeah, I'm a state central committeeman. You know, I had local offices, township supervisor. I was a trustee in Olympia Fields, et cetera, et cetera. And so the question was that part and parcel of why you were chosen? Possibly, possibly. There were many people who were electors that came from the state central committee. I don't remember how many. Then there were some that held other offices, other important offices. For example, you know, there are 20 people, 20 electors, and that comes from the amount of representation that you have in the U.S. House of Representatives, and we have 18 Congress people all throughout the state, plus your 2 senators, and they were represented by at-large members. And most of them had done something. You know, most of them had done something political. But at the same time, there were people that did not have political office, but they had done something in the community. There were many of them. So, you were chosen essentially by the Democratic Party of Illinois because that, Democrats won the state in the presidential election. But I'd like to say that anyone could have been an elector. There's nothing particularly special. There's nothing in the rules and regulations that say you have to be a state rep or you have to be this, that, and the other. Because what you're doing, again, for each congressional district is representing the views of a lot of people in the district, and at the same time being their proxy. You're going down there voting in their stead. So when your name was called and you came to the well, and of course, there's all kind of, when I was a state rep, there's all kind of electronic mechanisms to vote when we were voting on bills, but this was like they used to do, back in the day of Lincoln. You walk to the well and there was a ballot box, an old style ballot box, and you cast your ballot for each person. There was an opportunity to speak. I didn't speak, let's do the process. But some people gave a little speech. And after about an hour and a half, that was the process of sending our electoral votes to the Congress, of which, come the 6th of January, they will all be counted and recorded, and we will have all done our duty as citizens of this country in electing essentially the leader of our country. And it's still not an anachronism, the old title of leader of the free world. And I think that that's extremely important. So I like to tell everybody the job has been done. The grand experiment of democracy in America is one that is still fraught with obstacles, which means that we have to fight for democracy every day. I never thought I'd see things that I didn't see coming up in the 60s, all over again in terms of discrimination, voter suppression, which is real, not voter fraud, but election fraud is real. But in the end, the system works. We all have to get together and work together to make sure it continues to work.
Al, thank you very much for the honor of a second interview. The first one was enlightening, and I appreciate you giving me another chance. That's never happened before, and with electronics and our electronic age, and
there's going to be questions. Let me just say this though before you sign off, and I think I said it last time, but I want to reiterate it: the fact that what you're doing as a member of the media, of the press, and being in the public eye, sometimes the media can do some things or do things a certain way that you don't, particularly like. But the fact that we have a free questions of control of ourselves that we have, and I just think down through the years, even right now, there's a lot of things that are happening in our government right now. A lot of things, that the president has done, and so on and so forth. A lot of things that have been done in the state, which are not good, and we wouldn't even know about them had it not been for the press. We would not know about George Floyd the way we learned about it if it wasn't for a very brave and conscientious person on the scene who then gave that video to the press. And the press did its job by disseminating information and letting the public know what was going on. So I think that what you're doing and what the press does at every level, locally, regionally, and nationally, and worldwide, is extremely important. And it goes along with the protection of the democracy that I've talked about earlier. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. This is Gary Kopachinski for E! News Park Forest. We've had the honor of speaking with former State Representative Al Riley, who was most recently a member of the Electoral College. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Gary.